Everybody, thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. Q Reviews makes his triumphant return to my channel. It's been a while since he's done a collab here on my channel, but I'm incredibly happy to have him here in this video, and we're going to hear from him in just a little bit, as well as Rashad G Reviews back once again, both of them to talk about the third film in the Freddy Krueger franchise. When I told the two of them that I was starting this, they told me that they wanted to be in the third film review, so I was more than down, and I'm incredibly excited to hear from them in just a little bit, so you guys can look forward to that. But a big thanks to them for being here in this video. And let's get into this movie a little bit. Oh man. I'm not going to change my shirt. I just took a shower and my beard's a little wet and got some on my shirt. I wonder how many times that's happened in my videos. Probably a lot. So Dream Warriors, like I mentioned, is the third installment into the Freddy Krueger franchise, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and we see the return of Wes Craven, part of the writing team for this movie. And this film, in a lot of ways, just completely does not pay attention to the second film. In a lot of ways, the second film can just kind of be its own kind of follow-up to the first film, but this one feels like a more true follow-up to that first film. We have the character of Nancy returning, who is the main character from the first movie, played by Heather Langenkamp, and then the film actually mainly focuses on the character of Kristen, played by Patricia Arquette. And this is actually the first ever film or anything that Patricia Arquette ever starred in a professional way. And I gotta say, she did a fantastic job for this being her very first movie. I had a great time rewatching this movie. Overall, what I'll say right now is I just found this film to just be a fun, entertaining horror slasher. I think that this film does a great job of kind of having one foot in that horror, more psychological element that the first film had, and kind of dipping its toes into what the rest of the franchise would be, which is a little bit more hokey, a little bit more cheesy, and we've seen that happen with all of these slasher characters. Chucky and Jason have all done it, where the further they get into the franchise, the cheesier it gets. But I think that this movie does a great job of introducing characters that you know, are at least interested in, or at least are likable. They're fun, it's engaging, there's a sillier side to this, but on the overall, it's still a fun horror slasher. And I think that, again, Robert Englund is just fantastic as Freddy Krueger. This is just a very entertaining horror slasher for me. So let's talk a little bit about the premise before we hear from the other guys. Like I mentioned, in this film, we focus on the character of Kristen, played by Patricia Arquette. And yeah, you know, right at the beginning of the movie, we're introduced to the fact that she also is having these run-ins with Freddy Krueger, which is causing her to stay awake. She's having sleep deprivation, all this jazz. Cut forward a little bit further, and she's going into some sort of asylum, some sort of medical institution, where she's going to be with other people who are kind of facing something similar. And it turns out that they all are having a similar situation. Her and these other kids that she's in this medical facility with are all having these incredibly realistic, vivid nightmares, where they are all being visited by the same person. Now, they don't know that just yet at the very beginning. They don't know his name. They don't know the backstory behind him. But that's where Nancy, our main character from the first film, kind of comes into this story to kind of fill in the void. She has kind of gone on since the first film to actually study, you know, sleep patterns and kind of learn things about dreams. She went to school for it, and now she's, you know, kind of becoming somebody in this field. And so she doesn't really have a whole lot of experience, but when she gets here and she starts to see what these kids are going through and hearing from them, what she had kind of put aside in her mind as something that happened in the past is now kind of re-emerging. And now she has all these kids who are in danger of Freddy, and she kind of wants to be able to help them out. But at the same time, all of the rest of the doctors and everybody who's involved with these kids think that all of them are kind of having delusions of grandeur. And now you have this person who's being brought in to, as a, you know, professional, somebody to help these kids, who's actually agreeing with them and knows what they're going through, and has to try to sell the rest of the doctors and the people involved on the fact that what they're going through is actually happening. So right there you have a pretty interesting premise. It's fun, it's silly, it's over the top, but it also kind of leans its foot into a really engaging and very serious story. And I think that they did a really great job of weaving Nancy into this story while also focusing it on Kristen and the other kids. And yeah, I just found this to be a really entertaining time. I never really found myself bored. There's some great kills and some great one-liners and a beautiful use of practical effects in this film. There are some digital effects in this film that I also enjoy, but I think the practical effects in this movie just take the cake. I really love what they did with the visuals of this film. It's fun, it's engaging, it's tantalizing for the eyes. And though it has those cheesier elements from the 80s, the performances and some of the lines of dialogue that don't hold up perfectly, I did really find it to be incredibly exciting, and I just found myself really gripped by what was happening. Now, before I continue my thoughts on this, let's go ahead and hear what my buddy Q Reviews had to say about this.
it is, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch. Haha, Anthony, thanks so much for having me on. I'm ready. I got my Freddy Krueger glove on to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. Right here, let's get it off the back. This is a classic movie in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. It's a part of everyone's favorite. A lot of people say Dream Warriors is their #1 favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie. To me, I got this as my second favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie next to the original Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I prefer the first one better because they feel like real, tangible teenagers, and that movie is a lot more scarier than I think this part 3, Dream Warriors, but don't take anything away from Dream Warriors. I think Dream Warriors is probably the MTV version of Freddy, a superhero movie, horror movie, because there's a lot of mystical, magical things that goes on. Kristen, which is a Elm Street original child, has a dream of Freddy, and she gets with Heather Langenkamp from the first movie, Nancy Thompson, to take down Freddy once and for all. And these kids are in the hospital, so they, you know, they all got problems. Some smoke too much, some are on drugs, some are all fucked up, you know what I'm saying? But when they dream, they're being hunted by Freddy because they're the last kids on Elm Street. So when they go into their dreams, they notice that they have powers, you know, so they can essentially fight Freddy. You know, my boy Kincaid, one of the best black actors in horror. We all love Kincaid, the strong guy. We got Joey, he was a mute, but he was like a little pervert. He loved getting it on with sexy nurses, as you will see in this film. Of course, we got, oh, poor Jennifer. She just wanted to be a star. She wanted to be an actor. Got her head. One of the best kills, again, in the Nightmare franchise. Welcome to prime time, bitch. When he takes her up, Freddy hands come out the TV and smashes her head right in the fucking TV. Oh my god, that's good horror. Let's talk about the special effects here on Nightmare 3. There's some of the best effects in the series, I think. Let's talk about the first kill when Freddy takes his tendons out like this and plays them like a, you know, a puppet manolette or whatever the fuck it's called. I thought that sequence was very cool and creative. And how we're not going to talk about effects and not talk about the Freddy snake, the like 7-foot tall Freddy snake. Now, here's an interesting fact. When they first shot that Freddy snake, they had to change it within an hour because Freddy looked too much like a real penis, you know what I'm saying? Dick Freddy. So the Dick Freddy was pink and long and with a, you know what I'm saying, with that head on top. So the special effects people had to literally go in there an hour before, paint him kind of greenish and shit so he wouldn't quite look like, you know, the full dick that Freddy is. But Freddy's a dick either way, you know. So I love the effects in this movie. Let's talk about the Elm Street kids. They're all great. They're so great in this film. You know, Nancy, you know, Heather Langenkamp and Robert Englund do the best job of acting, to me, in the film. Now, the other kids aren't bad. I mean, they're, you know, they're pretty good. You had Patricia Arquette, which is a fire actress, as we know now. She played Kristen. I thought she was very good. But all these kids, I say, were the most likable teenagers in the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So much that you didn't want them to die. You know me, you know what I'm saying? I'm a horror guy. I'm rooting for Freddy Krueger. I want the, you know, like Camp Crystal Lake. You kids shouldn't be in fucking Camp Crystal Lake. You die. You shouldn't be there. What you doing having sex there? What you doing dreaming when fucking Freddy's around? You know better than this, but you don't have a choice. But these kids, I did not want to see Freddy lay a hand on their head. You know, I did not want them to die. I was rooting for the, you know what I'm saying, for these kids and their cool superhero powers. You know, one was a wizard, Kincaid was strong. My homegirl with the, you know what I'm saying, the double switchblades and the mohawk. I thought she looked way hotter when she got in her dream with her mohawk and her, you know, her double switchblades. I thought she was incredibly hot, by the way. And they were badasses when they got in there. thus the name Dream Warriors. And I see why this is everyone's favorite. This was probably one of the most funnest nightmares in the whole entire franchise. I compare this one to, if I was going to do a direct comparison, Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Just get that super fun factor. This movie's not really scary to me. It takes a lot to scare me, though. Like the first Nightmare on Elm Street, I see why people couldn't sleep and they were really afraid of it, because that movie dives deep into nightmare psychosis, which I think works for that film, and it's almost real, you know? Tina in Part 1 is the best horror movie death of all, you know what I'm saying? That's one of the best horror movies when she's like up in the air and flipping. I mean, that's fucking terrifying. It's not nothing really terrifying in here that will keep me up at night. I just thought all the kills were pretty creative. Freddy at his height. When this came out in 1987, boy, it was the talk of the town. I didn't get to see this in theaters, so when it came out on videotape, it was rented out for days and days and days and days. So I stayed in the video store, almost camped out till somebody brought a copy of Nightmare on Elm Street 3 to the video store, and all my dreams was true. I had a ton of time with Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I love this film to death. If I'm going to give it a score, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. And Nightmare 1 will be a 5 because it's just a classic horror movie. This is a classic on another level. Just a fun fucking horror movie. Sort of like Cabin in the Woods, you know what I'm saying? If you want to compare it to that. Not really horrifying, but fun. You know, and I really appreciate this film for that, for taking Freddy to the next level. And after Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Freddy was already on the climb, but this was like Marshall Mathers LP for Eminem. When that shit came out, he was just gone, you know what I'm saying? So I love this film, and thank you so much for having me on this show, Anthony. I can't wait to hear y'all thoughts on it, and don't just stare at it, eat it. Peace.
A big thanks once again to Q for being here in this video. Loved hearing what you have to say, man. I just loved having you in this video. It's been a while, so hopefully it's not too long before our next collab. But yeah, I loved hearing what you have to say, and it's pretty much we're on the same wavelength with this. I appreciate the behind-the-scenes stuff that you were able to throw in there as well. And that's one big thing that Q and Rashad and I have all been able to kind of bond over is horror and slashers. We all love this stuff so much, and we talk about it frequently in our Facebook group chat. So yeah, you know, I loved having you guys in this video. Loved hearing your thoughts. And before I even get into the rest of my thoughts on this movie, let's just go ahead and jump straight into Rashad G Reviews' thoughts on this.
They always had to have the brother acting all jive.
Freddy, where you hiding at, your burnt-faced pussy? I bet you think you're slick with your little milk biscuit, don't you? Why don't you come and get a piece of me? Krueger, pussy!
Perez, what's the deal? Pickles, is everything kosher? Thank you for having me in this video. I've been bugging you to death about this shit ever since you announced that you was reviewing all the Elm Street movies. I said, bro, you gotta put me in 3. So yeah, you put me in the first one, put me in this one because this is my favorite Elm Street sequel. Second favorite Elm Street movie besides the first one. Dream Warriors. Got the poster on the wall, man. I set the ambiance for not only the video, but for Halloween. And I know some of you thinking, damn, nigga, are you ever going to change the Dead President's poster? This is because I can't find a poster big enough to fit this damn frame. The frame is big as shit. But right now, we're talking about this right here, Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. I love this movie. As a critic, I know I'm supposed to go into the negatives and the positives, but there are no negatives. I have absolutely no negatives with Dream Warriors. I love everything about this movie. The acting, the script, the practical effects, the kills. Freddy Krueger himself, Robert Englund, is flawless as this character. This was probably the last time that we saw Freddy actually be somewhat serious and try to be scary. Now, when you watch it now, of course, the movie's not scary at all, but back then, the shit did kind of creep me out as a kid. But this was the last time you saw Freddy really serious, all right? After this, it was wisecracking, one-liners, and, you know, he became kind of a cartoon character, even still cool, you know what I'm saying? Like, I fucks with Fred, but this was like the last time we like, holy shit, like, you're kind of afraid of Freddy. Elm Street 3, it takes place in a psychiatric ward with these kids who all have a thing in common, and that's Freddy fucking with them in their dreams. Now they gotta band together to fight this motherfucker with the help of the OG from the first movie, Nancy, who has to come in. She's the glue that holds everybody together. And now we have to take on Freddy Krueger. And, you know, of course, Freddy and Nancy have to have a final standoff at the end. And the brother does survive. Yes. This is one of the rare occasions where the brother survives a horror movie. If you look at any scary movie from back in the day, even kind of modern, the brother always gets killed. All right, you always have to have that token jive talking, shit talking, and rhyming. Okay, Kincaid did rhyme a little bit. It's time to stop guessing and start messing. That had to be the director, like, hey, yes, can you be as black as possible? Can you rhyme a little bit? Can you do your jive? You're gonna live to the end of the movie. Just be as jive as you can. Okay, thank you, Kincaid. All right, and action.
Yo, Freddy, where you had at your burnt face pussy? How was that? Great. Yeah.
Yeah, the effects and the kills, I think all the kills work. They probably have some of the best kills in all the Elm Street movies, and I like the camaraderie with the kids. I thought they all worked well together. They, you really believe that they were all scared and that they really had to work together, and you rooted for all of them. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a typical slasher movie where the more body count, the better. You know what I'm saying? When you watch Elm Street 3, you don't want to see none of these kids get killed. I mean, you're aware that you're watching a horror movie, but you like these kids so much that when every time one of them gets killed, you're like, damn, no, not him. No, Philip. Oh, God, he made him into a puppet. Oh, shit, Jennifer through the TV. No, Taryn, let's get high. Which was very disturbing, by the way. Even when I watched that recently, when, the let's get high scene, and you see the little mouths open up on the arm, I thought that was scary as shit. And who can forget the kick-ass title song from, is it Dokken or Droken? Yeah. We're the Dream Warriors, ain't gonna dream no more. Love that track, man. I'm not even a heavy metal fan, but I always love that song. Whenever I hear it, I think of the movie. It just takes me back to a more simpler time, renting this at the video store, watching it with my little brother, scaring the shit out of him. So yeah, y'all, look at wrapping this up. Dream Warriors, to me, gets an A fucking plus. One of the illest horror movies of all time. The best Freddy sequel ever. And yeah, so that's all I got. Perez, thank you for having me in this video once again, man. The floor is yours. What you got, bro?
A big thanks once again to Rashad for being in another video. A big thanks to Q Reviews for being in this video. As usual, guys, you can find the links to both of their channels down below in the description box. Go give them some love. Let them know I sent you. Loved having you guys in this video. Loved hearing your passion and your excitement for this movie. And yeah, let's move on to my thoughts on this movie. Like I've mentioned, the practical effects are stellar in this movie. And some of the ones that really stand out to me are the Freddy worm. There's a great sequence where Kristen is inside of her dream and she's inside of this room where the actual entire room behind her starts to crumble around her and kind of just fall to pieces, and it's all practical. It's all real. You can see that it's real, and I love that about that. And then literally this big Freddy worm, literally a worm, a huge worm-looking snake creature with Freddy's face, ends up coming out of the ground, grabbing her by the legs, slamming her down, and starts to eat at her. And it's a practical effect. It looks fantastic. It still holds up today and looks better than a lot of effects that you see in movies today. That's one of them that really stood out to me. There's so many great practical effects in this movie. Majority of the film is filled with practical effects, so I'm not going to go over each and every single one, but all of them are really stellar. Another really great moment that I enjoy is that one of the kids in this movie that is, being chased by Freddy actually makes these, I don't know what the term for them is, but he makes the puppets, the puppets with the strings that you kind of do yourself and you kind of puppeteer. And I really enjoyed the fact that Freddy ends up killing him in a similar fashion, ripping the tendons out of his arms and his legs and kind of puppeteering him around, and then he ends up killing him in that way. But before he does that, the puppet that the kid already had there hung on the wall ends up turning into a little puppet Freddy, and now we get this great quick stop motion moment where we have this Freddy puppet walking around in stop motion animation. I love stop motion animation. It's one of my favorite forms of animation. So rewatching this movie and being able to see that sequence again, it was great. I think it really held up. And that just goes for all the visual effects in this film. I think they really, really hold up. There's a couple moments of digital effects that I feel weren't as good compared to, the rest of the practical effects that are right there on screen. But I found that majority of it really holds up. And even the stuff that is a little bit cheesy and dated, I think really, really still holds up in a fun and an entertaining way. What I think they really did a good job with this movie is making characters that are engaging and interesting to keep up with. Some of them are throwaway characters, and those are some of the characters that die a little bit earlier in the film, but the rest of the characters I think are exciting and kind of fun to keep up with. Like I mentioned, this film stars people like Heather Langenkamp, you have Patricia Arquette, Robert Englund returning as Freddy Krueger, but then you also have people like Lawrence Fishburne, who is actually credited as Larry Fishburne, so it's kind of crazy to see how he eventually was like embracing the Lawrence of it. But yeah, I really enjoyed seeing a young Lawrence Fishburne in this movie. He does a great job. Everybody gives a really good performance. One thing that I kind of found was funny in this movie is the character of Joey, who at the beginning of the movie we're introduced to the fact that he doesn't speak, that there's something wrong there, and we see him with a teardrop tattoo, but later on in the film he doesn't have the teardrop tattoo ever again. It's never referenced, and I just thought, like, What? We also get the return of John Saxon's character as Nancy's father, and we kind of see that he's a little bit of a drunk now that the mom, I believe, killed herself after, you know, the events of the first film. And yeah, his character is just kind of there, kind of thrown in the last half of the movie. John Saxon actually recently passed away, so rest in peace to him. But yeah, I always really enjoyed his short performances in these films. I just like him as an actor. And yeah, in this film, he returns. He ends up dying in the later part of the film. But the reason I brought him up is for one of the cheesier elements of this film is that there's a moment where Freddy pretends to be Nancy's dad in order to kind of trick her. He ends up killing her. Sadly, Nancy ends up dying in this film, which is a big bummer. But yeah, when John Saxon, who's supposedly Freddy at the moment, ends up flying in at one point in a very cheesy way, like he came in from the afterlife with like this like sparkles around him. When he's flying in, you can actually see the wires on him when he was flying in. So I thought that was super funny. I watched this on the most recent Blu-ray release of this movie, so it's the, you know, the most crisp way that you can possibly watch the movie, and you can actually very, very faintly in a moment when he's flying in see the wires that are on his shoulders, and I just thought that was really funny. And there's a couple moments where you can see some of the wire work in this movie, but yeah, you know, I think it's a really, really silly movie with some great moments, some great special effects, some great performances, and entertaining story, but definitely dips its toes in the cheesy side of things. One thing I haven't mentioned, but the other guys mentioned, is that when they go into this dream world, they all get superpowers or abilities or even just skills. Somebody actually becomes a wizard. One of the kids who is in a wheelchair ends up being able to stand up and also has the abilities to kind of do wizard powers and different things like that. One girl, actually the main character Kristen, just gets acrobatic abilities, which is just more of a skill than it is like a superpower. One person actually becomes super strong, gets super strength, so it's like, okay. And then one other chick says that she becomes sexy or hot or something like that. Literally, it's just her. She goes from being normal to being in this dream and being like all punked out with like a mohawk, and then she goes, and I'm bad, and she pulls out these two like Swiss Army knives. So stuff like that where it's just super cheesy, and they get these abilities in the dream. That character Joey, like I mentioned before with the teardrop, he couldn't speak earlier in the film, but he can speak in his dreams, and that's his superpower in his dreams. So sometimes certain characters had abilities, and sometimes some of them just had skills or basic things that you know most humans can do. So that's kind of a funny, cheesy part of the movie. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think they had fun with it. I think they had fun with these characters, making them engaging, and seeing them go up against Freddy was actually exciting and fun. One last thing I want to mention about this movie is that there's a subplot where the main doctor, who's working over Nancy and ends up having this weird relationship with Nancy throughout the film, he ends up coming across this nun, and this nun slowly appears here and there. She'll disappear randomly. It kind of almost seems like a ghost when she appears throughout the movie. And you know, she ends up filling him in on this information about Freddy Krueger. We learn that in a specific part of this medical facility that this young woman was actually left there with some of the sickest people that were in this facility. They all ended up raping her and doing all kinds of nasty things to her. And yeah, it turns out that she was actually the mother of Freddy Krueger. And you know, the way that she explains it is like he's the bastard of 100 men. You know what I mean? Which is not how that works, but okay. And I thought that was a sillier element of the film. But yeah, as the film progresses and we see this nun and she explains that his bones need to be buried in hollow ground in order for Freddy to be completely incapable of getting into people's dreams anymore, we end up finding out at the end of the film that she was actually Freddy's mom. The nun was Freddy's mom the whole time. And this will kind of start off the kind of Catholic kind of storyline subplot that kind of trickles its way into some of the future films. But yeah, on an overall, I found this film to be a good time. It's well acted, it's cheesy, it's fun, it knows what it is. It has one foot in the more psychological horror element that the first film had, and then another foot in the more cheesy vibe that the rest of the franchise would have. I know that the rest of the franchise isn't sometimes everybody's favorite, especially when he becomes a little bit more of a cartoon character, but I think that Robert Englund as Freddy is fantastic in this film. He's funny, he's fun, he's entertaining, the characters are engaging, and you kind of root for them and their adventure against Freddy. And on and overall, I just found this to be an entertaining film. So a big thanks to Rashad and Q for being here in this video. Loved hearing what you guys had to say and loved having you guys in another video. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button down below. Comment your thoughts. Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? And if you've never seen this movie, go watch this movie. It's definitely a movie that I recommend. So yeah, guys, that's going to be our thoughts on Dream Warriors, the third film in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, the Freddy Krueger franchise. A big thanks to you guys for watching. If you guys stuck through this entire long video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.